think a few months ago, Abbey was here and he gifted us this little guy, which I think we called Omniscient Owl. And I quite like it, especially the fluffy wings on the side and the little love heart in the center kind of makes me smile. And currently it's living in my office. All the little animals have been spread out across the Abbey. But a few days ago, I had an experience that indicated that the real thing kind of isn't so sweet. I was walking from Chemrezi Hall to Gotami House and saw this fluff ball just zoom across, and then on the snow, commotion was happening. And I saw that a little pygmy owl had a vole in its mouth, and it had dropped it, and I kind of reached down to try and get it away, and to see how the vole was doing, which was just like squealing and kind of flailing. And as I was there just trying to like hold space and see if it calmed down a bit, the owl went around my shoulder again and tried to zoom and pick it up again, but luckily it couldn't get hold. And it was this tiny little thing about this big, and probably if you took all the feathers off, not much bigger than the vole that it was trying to get. But and it went away, and then thankfully Venerable Sepal was there with me, and we're able to kind of get the vole and move it to a place where it could kind of scamper away. It was bleeding from the stomach, so not quite sure. It was able to move, so hopefully it's okay. But it was one of those moments where reality check around the animal world. I can so easily, my main interaction is with mudita. And it's quite pleasant having a cat on my lap and interacting that way, and I can lose sight of the misery of the lower realms, or particularly the animal realm. So witnessing things like this is like, oh right, this is what Geshe Tabke was talking about in terms of his direction for us to really contemplate the lower realms and what it would be like to be born there, in terms of having created the karma that we have a body or a mind that kills things, and to be eaten alive. It's like, wow, very sobering. And this brought to mind a story from one of the sutras I had read recently about how a falcon and a quail, where the Buddha uses the analogy of a falcon and a quail, where the falcon has the quail in its mouth, and then the quail is lamenting like, oh no, I got caught because I ventured outside of my own territory. And then the falcon and the quail have a conversation, and the quail says, well, my territory is living in the brush and the clubs of earth. And essentially the falcon releases the quail and goes, okay, you think you can beat me? And then it tries to get it in its home turf, and then it can't. The quail ducks sideways into a clod of earth, and the falcon smashes its wing against the clod of the earth and can't get it in its home territory. So the story about is how we can be protected if we stay in our own territory, or our own ancestral domain, I think is the exact words that's used in the sutra. And so going out of our domain is about going into sensual desire, the 5 chords of sensual desire. Whereas if we stay in our own domain, it's the 4 establishments of mindfulness. That if we keep within the 4 establishments of mindfulness, Mara can't get us. And so I've been looking at mindfulness of feeling recently, and it's been interesting when I'm scanning the body just to try and notice, be aware of feelings, that mostly it's unpleasant or neutral. There's not really many pleasant feelings going on. That's just interesting to sit with on its own. And then just trying to have open awareness of what feelings are arising. I can see that the unpleasant or pleasant mental feelings arise when I'm pulled off into stories. And a lot of the stories are around unpleasant feelings, where anger is arising, the hindrance of anger is arising. And it's essentially just the complaining mind. One small thing arises, and then whoop, I'm off, and I'm angry or irritated about something. And this retreat has been dovetailing, at least at the start, with some reviews on chapter 6 from Shantideva about anger. And so looking at the cause of anger, Shantideva quite clearly points out that it's unhappiness. And so to protect ourselves from anger, we need to notice when we're unhappy and nip it in the bud, and try and then work with, well, how don't I get unhappy about things? And reading Gela Rinpoche's commentary on chapter 6, there was one line or Q&A that he had where he said someone had asked him, how do I stop being angry? And he said it was in a public teaching, and so he could kind of answer in a way that he couldn't do one-on-one. It was essentially, don't think about yourself so much. That's the way to protect yourself from being angry. It's like, don't think about yourself so much. And yeah, it just clicked. It was like, yeah, when I'm unhappy about something, it's because I'm clinging onto what I want when I want it. And I'm frustrated because I'm not getting it in some way. So that was very helpful just to sit with, like, oh, I can protect myself from anger or from mental unhappiness by thinking about myself a little bit less, or maybe a lot less. And if I'm not thinking about myself, then who am I thinking about? Oh, maybe it's others. And then this brought to the idea of like, oh, this is how bodhicitta protects us. And coming back to that analogy of like staying in our own domain so that Mara doesn't get us, it's like, yes, the four foundations of mindfulness can do that. But this is also what cherishing others in bodhicitta does as well. And that can just be, the fundamental protection of our mind so that we don't go into self-centeredness and the unhappiness and then the anger that arises from that. And then just really, it's been helpful just to think around how mental unhappiness, I really can equate it with self-centeredness. I think as Venerable Tarpa pointed out in a review that recently that definitely relates to my own experience, is that if unfairness comes up, I only get unhappy about it if it involves me, with the unfairness there usually, or it's much more personal. I just thought to share this contemplation, and to see that if we can stay out of sensual desire, then Mara can't get us. We can stay within the bounds of the four establishments of mindfulness, and also being able to stay out of anger through reducing our self-centered thought, thinking about ourselves a little bit less, and rather turning our mind to the benefit of others. And I thought to close with this quote that I'm quite taken with from the Arya Ratnakuta Sutra about how bodhisattvas practice mindfulness of the body. So it says, "Oh no, this body does not last very long, ending in death. Those who know this do not live with trouble because of the body and receive its value. They receive the value of three things: the value of the body, the value of possessions, and the value of life. Thinking this body is impermanent, they become servants and students of all sentient beings, eagerly striving to do whatever needs to be done. Thinking this body is impermanent, they do not engage in failings related to the body, such as crookedness, dishonesty, and hypocrisy. Thinking this body is impermanent, while living and breathing, they do not carry out vile actions, even if their lives are at risk. Thinking this body is impermanent, they do not cling to craving for possessions. They become self-sacrificing, as it were, in every way. Moreover, the bodhisattva, while cultivating in relation to the body the application of mindfulness that observes the body, connects the bodies of all sentient beings to their own body, and they think, I should help all kinds of beings attain the bodies of Buddhas."